and the duty of this Council to address this criminal conduct. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
All right, wow, that was powerful. Now you have one more clip you wanted to show before we go to break. What are we about to see?
This is from an award-winning documentary, Alex, 18 award-winning documentary called Hard to Believe, talking about that this is going on, and actually at the end of it shows a doctor that has been investigated. All the investigators, about 17 different phone calls, were targeting the presidents, the directors, and the doctors committing this forced organ harvesting. So take a look at this.
By 2000, Falun Gong practitioners were disappearing into labor camps in mass numbers. At the same time, Chinese hospitals began promoting their organ transplant expertise.
I'm David Matus, and with me is David Kilgore. We've been asked to investigate allegations that there has been harvesting of organs of Falun Gong in China. David Kilgore is a former member of parliament and former cabinet minister for Asia Pacific, and I'm a Winnipeg lawyer doing immigration, refugee, and international human rights law in Winnipeg. And we have now done our investigation, and we're producing this report. And I didn't know whether it was true or not, and so my task initially was to try to figure out a way of approaching the issue so that I could either prove it or disprove it and not just walk away and say, I don't know.
The number of executions in China varied widely depending on who was counting. But Matus says no matter which number he used, the number of executions and the number of organs didn't add up.
The transplant volumes increased substantially after the persecution of Falun Gong began. And I mean, there's a lot of other evidence, but the most likely explanation for the increase is the Falun Gong. We pursued every investigative trail we could find. In the report, you will see that there are 18 different avenues of proof and disproof we considered and evaluated. Our bottom line conclusion, after considering everything as best we could, was that the allegations are true. We believe them to be true, that this harvesting is indeed happening.
Matus says what made Falun Gong organs especially attractive was the practitioners' healthy lifestyle. They do not drink or smoke. On many of the recordings of phone calls made to more than 100 Chinese hospitals, doctors assure callers that transplant organs are from healthy Falun Gong practitioners.
都是那种健康的法轮功是吧？健康的法轮功。对对对，看听说学的好的才能做完，因为这种东西做了要保证质量的。那是都要像你们都要做监狱去自己去挑选是吧？
All right, folks, powerful stuff. We'll be right back on the other side of this break. Stay with us. This is Conversations That Matter. We saw some really powerful stuff in the last segment, Mitchell. What should people be doing about this? I mean, there's not really a lot of ways for people to influence the Communist Party of China, but as just decent human beings, it's hard to know that this is happening. What can people do to try to stop this atrocity that's going on?
The most important thing, I believe, Alex, is discernment. The pen is always more mighty than the sword, as well as wisdom and knowledge. So I would truly implore people to learn about Falun Gong. It's a beautiful spiritual movement. Those who are into the yoga, health and wellness realms, even the fitness realm would absolutely get a kick out of learning about this, especially because we're in all these lockdowns and this COVID crisis. People are stressed out, uncertain, and Falun Gong offers an incredible way of relieving the stress, the anxiety, and raising those levels of vitality and mindset to proliferate positivity and prosperity. So I would suggest going to the website faluninfo.net to learn about Falun Gong, as well as all the skeptics out there again, endtransplantabuse.org. But like I said, Alex, and like you said, we can go to a war with China. We don't want a nuclear holocaust in our hands, but for people to be discerning, aware, and assertive in basically calling their congressmen, sharing this with their colleagues, their business people, as well as their classes, if you're professors, share the websites and the knowledge, because people should voice their support in exposing the CCP and coming to the aid of those like the Falun Gong who are being brutally persecuted under this mass murdering regime.
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. You have two more clips that you want to show. Let's do those so we don't run out of time, and then we'll wrap up. But tell us what we're about to see, Mitchell.
Absolutely. This is from an award-winning documentary, Hard to Believe as well, the second clip. And the documentary is free of charge on YouTube. This is also sharing about what is actually going on and the testimony from the doctor, surgeon turned bus driver from China, who actually did a forced organ harvesting on a prisoner of conscience and then fled to London to tell about it.
One of the worst crimes in history began taking place in hospitals throughout the country as organ transplants suddenly began to skyrocket.
We've been asked to investigate allegations that there has been harvesting of organs of Falun Gong in China. Our bottom line conclusion, after considering everything as best we could, was that the allegations are true.
I began conducting comprehensive interviews with medical professionals, Chinese law enforcement personnel, and over 50 refugees from the Laogai system. But I estimate that 65,000 Falun Gong were murdered for their organs from 2000 to 2008.
Essentially what organ harvesting means is they're taking Falun Gong practitioners literally like cattle, holding them in prison camps, testing their blood and other vital organs, and when someone comes into the country that needs a heart, a liver, a kidney, they find a match, they take the Falun Gong practitioner, extract their organs, of course killing them in the process.
People who are expecting this to sort of just be solved naturally by all we have to do is sit back and they'll fix it, this is wrong. The West has to take a role. And the one role the West can do is say, these are our values. We cannot go beyond this. There are certain lines we can't cross. This is a red line. That's an absolute red line.
Enver Tohti, the surgeon turned bus driver, says it's been 20 years since he removed the organs from that live prisoner. It remains a mystery why so few people have ever heard about the thing he says he cannot forget.
This is my experience. This is a real true story. If you keep silence, this tragedy will continue. And people, they just don't want to touch this evil. Because if you touch this evil, maybe at the end of the day, you may not be able to tackle this, the consequences. That is my guess.
Wow, that's some powerful stuff, Mitchell. And you have one more clip that you wanted to show us. I mean, this is just heartbreaking stuff, but walk us through what we're about to see.
Absolutely. Well, before our offices got shut down where I am, we did a clip. Forgive me, there's two words that were a little bit typoed because I was working with Vietnamese and Chinese people, but it's called The Genocide of a Lifetime. And the clip actually shows that this is not a cult, this is not a terrorist group, this has been demonized and brutally persecuted, and Falun Gong has actually stood the test of time in their decades of courage to expose evil, stand up righteously and peacefully against this mass murdering regime. And I think this will definitely shed a great limelight on this atrocity that is occurring.
There are no human rights in China, and the most outrageous example of no human rights in China is killing a peaceful community of Falun Gong practitioners and Uyghurs, who are Muslims, and Tibetan Buddhists, and Christians, house Christians, for their organs, kidneys, livers, and so on, and then selling the organs to wealthy Chinese or foreigners, and the people are killed in the process.
The belief that I have, I share with David Kilgour, that organ harvesting is widespread in China, and it is restricted almost exclusively to Falun Gong practitioners. The Falun Gong are to the Chinese regime of today what the Jews were to the Nazis during the war. And we should all take note of this and look at China with new eyes.
There's no evidence that Falun Gong is a cult of any sort. There's no evidence of political action to try and bring down the Chinese government. There's no evidence of anything other than a deep desire to be left alone to practice their spiritual beliefs in peace and to not be locked up and murdered.
David and I have met Falun Gong practitioners in probably 50 countries.
Or even more, maybe.
Okay. All walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds, all education. I've found them to be a wonderful group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I mean, Falun Gong, first of all, it's not even an organization because it's a set of exercises with a spiritual foundation. Yeah. Everything's on the internet. You don't pay anything. You don't sign up to anything. You can start whenever you want. You can stop with it whenever you want. You don't even have to tell anybody you're doing it. Their principles are very simple and ethical. And I mean, all of that is true.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for bringing those, Mitchell. We've only got a few minutes left, and I want to ask you,